His gray eyes slid over my face, making me feel exposed and vulnerable. His words, harsh and merciless, pierced the silence of the room like arrows. "You promised me a divorce, Eric. A divorce in 3 years. That time has come." He didn't reply, only stared intently, studying every feature of my face as if trying to unravel the mystery hidden in my eyes. I endured his silent pressure, feeling a wave of fear rising in my chest. "Divorce?" he scoffed, his lips curling into a cunning smirk. "I promised you nothing. You've had enough time to live your life and have your fun. From now on your home is here." His voice sounded like steel, devoid of any warmth. His words filled me with dread. This wasn't what I expected to hear. But Eric, you can't." I faltered, unable to find the right words. "I can," he cut in, throwing me a frigid glance. "And I will. You're mine, Alice, whether you like it or not." He placed his whiskey glass on the table, the sound of glass touching wood echoing in the room like a gunshot. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird. "If you try to burn down the house or pull anything similar again, the conversation will be different." His voice turned quiet, but there was a dangerous cunning in it. "Oh, and don't even think about running away. I'll find you anyway, and you won't be leaving the country, darling." His words sent a shiver down my spine. He knew about my daughter. About Katrusia, whom I was forced to leave in another country, escaping his tyranny. "Eric, please let me go. I don't want to live with you," I whispered, barely holding back tears. "Don't beg," his voice turned cruel. "It won't change anything. You're mine, Alice. Yours because I want it." He stepped closer, his shadow looming over my chair. I felt suffocated by his proximity, as if there wasn't enough air in my lungs. "No." I pushed away, his hand resting on my shoulder. "I'm not yours. I'll never be yours." Eric stepped back, his face flushing with anger. He clenched his fists, and I saw cruelty flash in his eyes. I expected a blow, but he only threw me a fierce glance and left the room, slamming the door behind him. I was left alone, trembling with fear and helplessness. His words echoed in my ears like a curse. He wouldn't let me go. Never. I clenched my fists, feeling anger building up inside me. No, I wouldn't give up. I would find a way to escape from this monster. My thoughts turned to Katrusia. My little daughter, forced to live without her mother. Her image warmed my heart, giving me strength to fight. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was certain: I couldn't live with Eric. I had to find a way to escape. Several days passed since the conversation with Eric. He kept me locked up, forbidding me even to leave the room. The days dragged on slowly, each second feeling like an eternity. My thoughts were constantly with Katrusia. I searched for any opportunity to escape. I scanned the room, looking for possible exits or hiding spots. I examined the window, but the bars were sturdy and there was no chance of escaping through it. One day, when Eric was away on business, I noticed a small screwdriver on the table near the window. My heart raced faster. This was my chance. Carefully, so as not to make any noise, I grabbed the screwdriver and began to unscrew the window handle. My hands trembled with excitement, but I couldn't give up. Finally, the handle gave way, and the window opened. The fresh air hit my face, filling my lungs with exhilaration. I glanced at Eric's vast estate. It resembled an impregnable fortress, but today this fortress had lost its power over me. Descending from the second floor was challenging, but fear of Eric gave me strength. I carefully climbed out through the window and began to descend the wall, clinging to the brickwork. The ground was approaching. The fear of heights squeezed my chest, but the thought of Katrusia prevented me from giving up. Finally, my feet touched the ground. I looked back. Eric's mansion loomed tall, like a predator watching its prey. Now I needed to run. Run far and fast. I didn't know where, but anywhere was better than this mansion. The darkening forest nearby beckoned me forward, promising shelter. I darted towards it without looking back. Sharp branches snagged my clothes, tree roots tangled my feet, but I ran, ignoring the pain. Night fell quickly, enveloping the forest in impenetrable darkness. Fear gripped my heart with coldness. I was lost. Suddenly I heard the rustle of branches. Holding my breath, I listened. Someone was coming. My heart pounded wildly. Was it Eric sending a search party after me? I hid behind a thick oak tree, pressing my body against its rough bark. The rustling of branches drew nearer. I prayed not to be noticed. A man emerged from the trees. He was tall and sturdy, dressed in simple clothing. A hatchet lay on his shoulder. I froze, too afraid to reveal myself. The man stopped nearby, looking around. "Is anyone here?" he spoke in a deep voice. I remained silent. Fear paralyzed me. The man sighed and moved on. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, relieved that I hadn't been discovered. Several minutes passed before I dared to emerge from behind the tree. My legs trembled, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I walked aimlessly, hoping to find a road or settlement. The clock showed 2 in the morning. The forest seemed endless, and I felt like a lost insect in its depths. Suddenly I saw light. Weak and flickering, but so familiar and necessary. Hoping for the best, I headed towards it. The light led me through the thickets. Each step was a struggle, but hope warmed me from within. Finally, I emerged into a small clearing, in the middle of which stood a tiny cottage. Wooden, with light shining from its windows, the same light that had drawn me so strongly. I approached closer and gently knocked on the door. There was no answer. I knocked again, harder this time. From inside I heard shuffling, and then the door slowly opened. At the doorstep stood an elderly man with a gray beard that almost reached his waist. The man didn't let me finish. I saw sympathy in his eyes. "Come in, child," he said softly. "You must be cold and scared." I didn't hesitate. Even if this man was a stranger, the cottage was the only safe place I had seen all day. He helped me inside. The cottage was small but tidy. In the center crackled a fireplace, its warm light instantly comforting me. "Sit down, warm yourself," the woodsman pointed to an old chair by the fireplace. "And then you can tell me what happened to you." I sat, feeling the warmth from the fire seeping into every fiber of my being. The man poured me a cup of warm herbal tea. After a few sips, I felt my strength returning. As I recounted to the woodsman about Eric and my escape, I lowered my head, waiting for his reaction. He listened silently without interrupting. "You've had a tough fate," he finally spoke when I finished. "But you're a strong woman, that's clear." "I need to find a way to get out of here," I whispered, "to return to my daughter." "It won't be easy," the woodsman shook his head. "Eric is a powerful man. He'll be able to find you, especially if he involves the authorities." Despair washed over me at his words. What should I do? How to get rid of Eric once and for all? "But there's one option," the man continued, seeing my state. I raised my head, suddenly feeling a spark of hope. "I know a woman," he explained. "She lives far from here, in a small town by the sea. Her name is Maria. She can help you. She assists women in similar situations. Do you know her? I asked, hardly believing my ears. I do, the woodsman nodded. She once sought my help. I can take you to her. I couldn't help but smile. It was a chance I couldn't afford to lose. Thank you, I whispered, sincerely grateful for his help. Thank you for everything. The woodsman smiled warmly. Everything will be fine, child. We'll set out tomorrow at dawn. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. The warmth of the fireplace and the hope for a better future enveloped me. Finally, I had a chance for freedom and reunion with my daughter. Morning came swiftly. The woodsman prepared food for me and provided hot tea. While I ate, he packed a small backpack with essential items: dry rations, a flask of water, a warm blanket, and a map of the area. The road won't be close, he said, handing me the backpack. But you need to move fast. Eric is probably already looking for you. I nodded, understanding him. Every minute was crucial. We bid farewell to the woodsman, and he led me to the backyard of his cottage. Stick to this path, he pointed to a narrow, barely noticeable trail among the trees. It will lead you to the other side of the forest. There you'll meet an old mill. Near it, a stagecoach stops, heading to the town by the sea. Thank you again, I said, hugging the woodsman goodbye. You can't imagine how grateful I am. Take care of yourself, he replied, warmly smiling. And good luck. I stepped onto the path and disappeared into the dense forest. It was tough going, my legs already aching by evening, but I didn't stop. The idea of meeting Maria and the possibility of reuniting with Katrusia pushed me forward. Several days passed. I was almost losing hope when, finally, I saw the old mill. It stood like a solitary sentinel in the middle of the field. Near it, as the woodsman promised, was a stagecoach. I approached and knocked on the door. A sturdy man with a kind face opened the door. Where are you headed, miss? He asked. To the town by the sea, I replied, trying to conceal the excitement in my voice. Get in, the coachman nodded. There's room. I climbed into the stagecoach and settled in. It set off, the wheels creaking on the road. The journey was long, but I hardly noticed the time. My thoughts were filled with Maria and how she would help me. Finally, in the evening, the stagecoach stopped in a small square in the town center. I bid farewell to the coachman and, asking for directions, made my way to Maria's house. Finding it was easy. It was a small house with a neat flower bed by the window. I approached the door and knocked. The door opened almost immediately. A woman in her 50s stood at the threshold with gentle eyes and a warm smile. You must be Alice, she asked, carefully examining me. Yes, it's me, I replied, feeling my heart pounding with excitement. The woodsman warned me, Maria said, opening the door wider. Come in, you probably need some rest. I entered the house and the door closed behind me. Finally, I was safe. My journey to freedom had come to an end. Maria led me to a small but cozy room on the second floor. The room was simple but tidy. By the window stood a bed adorned with a white, hand-embroidered coverlet. Paintings of seascapes hung on the walls. A rest, Maria said, placing a pitcher of water and a cup on the table. We'll talk tomorrow. You probably need some time to regain your strength. I nodded, thanked her, and settled onto the soft bed. Fatigue instantly enveloped me, and I fell asleep, barely touching the pillow. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of relief I hadn't felt in a long time. My muscles still ached, but the exhaustion had receded. Heading downstairs, I found Maria in the kitchen. She was bustling around the stove, preparing breakfast. "A good morning," I greeted, taking a seat at the table. "A good morning, Alice," Maria replied, placing a plate of hot food in front of me. "Have your breakfast, then we'll talk." Breakfast was simple but delicious. Cheese omelette and fresh bread filled me with energy. After breakfast, we sat at the table in the living room. "Tell me everything," Maria requested, her gentle eyes looking at me attentively. I told her my story about meeting Eric, his tyranny, and my decision to escape. Maria listened attentively without interrupting. "I understand you, Alice," she said when I finished. "Unfortunately, I've heard many stories like yours." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling despair creeping in. "Eric is a powerful man," Maria replied. "He'll easily find you if he involves the authorities. But there are a few options." She told me about her work. She helped women who had suffered from domestic violence to hide from their persecutors and start a new life. "I can help you change your appearance," she said. "And find you a job and accommodation in another town." "But Katrusia," I whispered. "I can't leave her." "I understand," Maria replied. "But right now both of you need safety." She proposed a plan. I would stay in the seaside town under her care until she found a way to take Katrusia out of the country. "It won't be easy," she warned. "But I'll do everything possible to reunite you." I agreed. It was the only hope for reuniting with my daughter. The following weeks passed like a blur. Maria helped me change my appearance. She cut my hair and dyed it a different color. She also taught me how to use light makeup to change the shape of my face. At the same time, Maria helped me find a job at the local bakery. It was honest but hard work. But it allowed me to earn a living and not depend on anyone. In the evenings, I spent time with Maria. She became not only a guardian but also a friend. She told me stories of women she had helped and instilled hope in me. With each passing day without news of Katrusia, my heart squeezed tighter. Although Maria assured me that it takes time and everything was going according to plan, doubts gnawed at my soul. Would she succeed in taking Katrusia away? Would I ever see my daughter again? To distract myself, I fully immersed myself in work. The bakery was small, but it was bustling with activity. Alongside other bakers, I baked bread, rolls, and various pastries. The smell of fresh bread that filled the bakery became a kind of symbol of my new life, modest but free. Maria mentioned that the seaside town would soon host its annual sea festival. She suggested we go together. I agreed, hoping that the vibrant festival would alleviate some of the anxiety that had been haunting me. The day of the festival dawned bright and sunny. The town was filled with a festive atmosphere. Bright markets were set up on the main square, music echoed, and a cheerful crowd of people roamed between the stalls. Maria led me to a small cafe overlooking the sea. We sat at a table on the terrace and ordered coffee and pastries. The azure sea, like an endless silk fabric, rippled on the horizon. The cries of seagulls circling above the waves mingled with the music from the square. For a moment it seemed like I could push all worries aside and simply enjoy this moment. Suddenly my gaze fell on a man standing near one of the stalls at the market. He was tall and robust, dressed in an expensive suit. My heart skipped a beat. It was Eric. I grabbed Maria's hand, pointing to him. "He's there," I whispered, barely holding back panic. Maria followed my gaze, her expression growing more serious. "Don't worry, Alice," she reassured me, though I could hear the concern in her voice. "Stay here, I'll handle this." She straightened up and quickly walked in the direction where Eric was standing. I was left alone, and a wave of panic washed over me with renewed force. What was Eric doing here? How did he find me? These thoughts tormented me. Minutes passed, feeling like an eternity. Then I saw Maria returning to me. "He didn't see you," she said, her face troubled. "But he's clearly looking for you." "What should we do?" I asked, feeling like the ground was slipping from under my feet. "We can't stay here," Maria replied. "He will find you. We need to leave." And she told me her new plan. Maria's plan was risky, but considering the circumstances, it was the only option. She had arranged with a local fisherman whom she knew well for a night journey out to sea. He was to take me to a small island located a few hours' sail from the town. The island was uninhabited, but there was an old, neglected watchtower there. It served as shelter for fishermen during storms, and that's where I was to hide until Eric lost the trail. I packed the essentials for the journey: warm clothing, some food, water, and a first aid kit. We met the fisherman late in the evening, when the town was already immersed in sleep. The night sea seemed like a dark abyss studded with stars like diamonds. The boat rocked on the waves and I felt a slight nausea. But the fear of Eric was stronger than any discomfort. The journey was long and exhausting. The sun was already rising when the fisherman finally pointed out a small piece of land in the midst of the endless sea. It was an island. The watchtower looked pitiful: dilapidated walls, boarded-up windows. But surprisingly, inside there was an old table, a few chairs, and even an old bed. The fisherman left me some fish and vegetables, promising to return in a week. Alone, I felt a haunting loneliness. The wind outside howled like a wild beast, and the creaking of the old watchtower sent shivers down my spine. But the thought that I was safe from Eric warmed my soul. The following days dragged on slowly. I explored the island. It was small but lush with vegetation and sandy beaches. I spent my days gathering edible plants and observing birds. At night, when the sky was blanketed with millions of stars, I thought of Katrusia. One morning, when I had already lost track of time, I heard the sound of a boat. My heart raced wildly. Had Eric found me? But it was the familiar fisherman who emerged from the boat. He brought me food and delivered the news. "Maria is looking for you," he said. "She says she has found a way to get your daughter out of the country, but you need to meet her in another city." Those words echoed in my ears like angelic singing. Finally, I would be able to be with Katrusia. Preparing for the journey was easy. The fisherman agreed to take me to the mainland once again. The journey seemed to pass faster as my heart sang with joy. Maria met me at the pier. She looked tired, but her eyes were shining with happiness. "Alice, I'm so glad to see you," she exclaimed, embracing me tightly. "And I have good news." She explained that she had managed to arrange with smugglers to transport Katrusia across the border. But it required a considerable amount of money, which Maria did not have. During my time in the seaside town, I had managed to save some money. Together with these savings and the valuables I had left from my former life, we had enough. Without hesitation, I handed over everything I had to Maria. The collected funds allowed Maria to negotiate with the smugglers for Katrusia's passage across the border. It was a risky operation, but there was no other way. Maria and I set off for another city, where the meeting with the smugglers was to take place. On the way, I trembled with excitement and fear. Would everything go smoothly? Would fate once again separate me from my daughter? Finally, we arrived at the location, a small, cozy cottage on the outskirts of the city. Maria stayed outside to wait and I went inside. In the room sat two men. They looked stern and unfriendly, but their expressions softened when they saw me. Maria had evidently told them my story. "I will arrange everything," one of the men said shortly. "But remember, the risk is high." I nodded, holding back tears. I was willing to do anything just to be with Katrusia again. We waited for several days. Finally, one morning, Maria burst into the cottage, her face glowing with joy. "She's here," she exclaimed, barely catching her breath. "Katrusia is with you." I couldn't believe my ears. I rushed to the door, and my heart nearly burst with happiness when I saw my daughter. Katrusia looked a little scared, but when she saw me, her face lit up with a smile. We embraced each other so tightly, as if afraid of being separated again. Tears streamed down my cheeks, mingling with Katrusia's tears of joy. Finally, we were together, and no one could tear us apart. The smugglers hurried to take us away. We said goodbye to Maria, promising never to forget her help. The journey was long and exhausting, but I didn't notice anything around me. I kissed Katrusia, told her about my life, and reassured her that everything would be fine now. Finally, we crossed the border. We were free. Starting a new life was not easy. We had to get used to a new country, language, and customs. But the most important thing was that we were together. We found a small apartment and modest jobs. Evenings were spent together, telling each other about our adventures. With time, life began to improve. Katrusia went to school, made new friends. I found a job that allowed me to take care of my daughter. Several years passed. The scars of the past remained, but the pain gradually faded. Katrusia and I grew even closer, having gone through such trials together. One sunny day, sitting with Katrusia in the park, I told her the whole story, about meeting Eric, about escaping, about Maria's help. Katrusia listened attentively, her eyes filled with tears. She hugged me tightly. "You're my hero, Mom," she whispered. I smiled, her words were the best reward. "Yeah, thank you for being with us today. I hope that this story has brought you emotions. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell so you don't miss any of our new stories. Thank you for your support. You are the best.